Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Mobigital 7. This is not my creation, that's why it's a name that I can barely say. Hopefully you can say it better than I can. This is the work of Dax Neal, and yes, Dax has a channel, and I will link his channel down in the video description below. But he found a way to make a super light, HD0 competitive, Caddx Vista, it's naked, whoop. So, of course, to fly this, you'll need to, at the very least, you'll need to have the DJI FPV goggles. You can use the DJI FPV radio with this. This is the only DJI radio because you can use the Vista as your receiver as well. But in my case, I am using the Radio Master Zorro. And I've got some new stick ends on there, the thumb grippies. I've got a hankering for these things. I like them. But Dax has got build videos on this, and he's got several flights, so definitely go check out his videos on this, because it'll certainly help you a lot. I'm not going to cover it in great depth, because he's already done it to a degree. I'm just going to cover my experience with it. So the first thing to start off with is Dax has got a print on Thingiverse, or you can also have that print printed up by a print service of your choosing. Of course, Naked Vista, it's pretty much required because you want to get that weight down as much as you can. I've got the Caddx Nebula Pro Nano, or Nebula Nano Pro, whichever it's called. The motors are Happy Model 1102 10,000 kV motors. I swapped these out from a Uzi 85 case because these motors are actually hard to come by, but I like the 10,000 kV. And I've got some new HQ props here. They're the 40mm tri-bladed 1.5mm motor shaft props. They're relatively new, and I like them, but they do kind of break off right at the hub. Broke a few props. The flight controller that I used is the JHEMCU GS405A. This is a 1 or a 2S board. It does have Express LRS on the board, and I am using the Radio Master Zorro with Express LRS, which I really like as well. A couple things to note about that board. One, it's kind of expensive. There's no motor connectors, so you've got some tiny little soldering on there. It does have several UARTs, so you have all sorts of options for it. I think the price, I kind of skipped over that, was $71 or $72 now, the last I looked. It does have black box on here, so if you like to tune via black box, that's a feature. I am running Betaflight 4.2.8. Express LRS receiver on this board. While it's integrated on the board, it's not like we've seen on other all-in-one boards. This one has its own Wi-Fi for the receiver, so you can update the receiver separately. You don't have to update Betaflight in order to update the receiver, so that's a bonus. And if you can see it right down there, it's got a little UFL, so the antenna can be tucked out of the way. You don't have a cube antenna or anything like that down there, so it keeps the profile relatively low. Hopefully I'm getting a decent profile shot of that. Also, on my first iteration of this, I had glued the camera down. At my second iteration here, of course, I didn't glue the camera down. You may see a touch of jello. I thought it was really, really good, and it gave me the opportunity to try out some different props. Found that the Gem Fan props, because they turn up at the profile, it created a little bit of a problem with clearing the camera. You can see how it's a touch wider than the base. So initially, when I did have these props on, I stuck some foam under there, and then I used some welder adhesive, or people call it E6000, to bring the camera up just a touch because the props wouldn't clear natively down on the frame. You also need some nylon or some screws that are M2 and they're 25mm. These are actually hard to come by. You can see it come from a Micro Fasteners, and I'll link that down in the video description. I bought the wrong bag first, so I had to buy a second bag. But Dax was nice enough to send me a kit, so he sent me a print, and he sent me enough nylon screws to get me by. I did break a few of those, and it does take a while to repair this thing. You know, it's a micro, so it's not necessarily easy to work on or fast to repair. So when you break these little guys like I did, take some time to get them out and put new ones back in. And continuing to front load the damage report, I also broke one of my ORT antennas. These are nice antennas, and they're very, very light. That's why I used it to keep the weight down. But unfortunately, through a few crashes, I pulled the antenna loose. This is repairable. Thankfully, it didn't do any great damage. I just need to get it back in there and kind of crimp it all back together. You can see I've got some welder on there as well, but I changed how I applied the welder on my second antenna. I globbed it on there so the welder would actually play a little bit of a role in protecting the antenna staying inside the UFL. So I've got it kind of slimed on there a bit. And yeah, Dax has got stickers. Thank you, Dax. I should mention his name is Dax Neal. The way I have mine built, it weighs just under 39 grams. And as a refresher for another digital whoop, the HD0 Mobula 7 weighs just under 41 grams. And prior to building the Mobigital 7, my favorite Caddx Vista or DJI Whoop was the iFlight Alpha A75 HD, and that is a 2 to 3S Whoop, and it weighs 70.5 grams. It's a porker. But it still flies really nice. But I like this one a lot better. The flight video that you're going to see are with these Nanotech 300 milliamp 2S batteries. They're the 45 to 90C rated, or labeled, as I like to say, because the rating doesn't mean anything. It's mumbo jumbo. But it's a way you can identify the batteries. But they're very difficult to get. I don't think Hobby King is making them anymore. I did buy the new version of this one, which is bigger, and it's not as good. But with that battery, my flight weight comes up to just under 57 grams. I did also fly it on this G&B 530 milliamp 2S battery, and I got about somewhere between 4 minutes and 40 seconds and 5 minutes. And that brings the weight up to 65.5 grams. So as we start the flight, pay a special attention to when I take off, because I think that's where I see a little bit of camera movement, a little bit of jello. Maybe you saw it right there. But we're going to take it for a spin around. On the 300 milliamp battery, we're going to get a flight time of about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Of course, if you fly slower, or if you're flying outside and you're flying faster, your flight time is going to vary. I think the 530 milliamp battery would be something you probably want to move to specifically for outside flight. You know, you can get more space, you can get heavier on the throttle, you're very likely to do punch outs or certain sorts of tricks or maneuvers where you're just higher on the throttle, and therefore you'll probably need a little bit more battery. But for inside flying, I like to stay light so I can have fun and I can fly the way I like to fly. Now, something else is why I'm kind of signal boosting Dax's work here, is I think this is a market that most of our Whoop manufacturers have just missed. 2S. Most of these Whoops, just like the iFlight Alpha A75 HD, you know, really it's 3S. And when you add that extra cell and that extra size and weight of a battery, for me, when it comes to inside flight, it's still fun, but I have in the back of my mind this concern that if I have a crash and then I hit something, I'm going to do some damage in the house. And of course, they are far noisier with all the prop rotation. You know, extra cell, more prop rotation, that gets us the thrust that we're looking for. But if we drop that weight down and we make some wise part choices, we can get a quieter quad, a quad that can fly for a relatively good period of time, good performance, and because we've dropped the weight, the damage inside a home or any other flying space that you might have is going to be less. I have not flown this outside at all. I've mentioned it to a number of people via the comment section of other videos and chat and stuff like that. Our weather has just been brutally bad over the course of the last 5 weeks. I've got another video coming up, but I have to roll back the footage to clear back when I first started flying that thing, because I just don't know when the weather's going to clear up. We've had 3 snowstorms that have closed the schools. We've had rains, wind, terrible cold. Today was actually a relatively decent day, but we've got standing water in the backyard, and I don't tend to fly when I have standing water back there. I know, conformal coating, but I just can't be bothered with conformal coating. But I was really having a good time with this, flying at all sorts. Actually, you know, I rebuilt it because I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to see how far I could drive the weight down without getting extreme. One of the things about going extreme in my case of builds is that I tend to find that my durability or my repairability suffers in going to extreme decreased weight. In this case, with no motor connectors and have to do the soldering, that's kind of extreme. So if you bork a motor or something, it's going to take a bit to repair. But there you go. Flight has ended, as I said, about 2 minutes and 40 seconds on that flight. I've also got some flippies and floppies because I was kind of impressed with my tune. It's better than my average tune. Not to say that I'm a great tuner or a master tuner, but I felt that it really just kind of tracked really well. And for my flight style, especially in the house, I thought it was very controllable, and I didn't have a lot of horrible crashes getting used to the quad once I did get it tuned. And I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't do any RPM filtering. I didn't raise the motor frequency. You know, I didn't go 48 kilohertz, which you can do to try to get some extra flight time if that's your thing. I don't like how that changes how the motor slows down, so I tend to stay stock. I didn't do any RPM filtering. And I thought the tune was pretty good, so I thought I'd show you a little section clipped up of the flips and the rolls that I did in the house to kind of test that and then show it to you. Here's a look at the filters. As I said, I did nothing other than just tune the PIDs. I don't tend to use the sliders. I've experimented with that. Maybe this summer, this spring, I can get into using the sliders more, but this is a shot of my PIDs and the filters. Oftentimes people ask about my rates. Here are my rates. It's something that I think I'm going to have to make a video on. Maybe I can make 15 cents off to showing that video to everybody about my rates. I've been using these rates for a long time. I still use Betaflight rates. Up in this top corner, I'll just play a casual flight where I'm flying this particular battery and the family's out. It's evening time and I'm just kind of chilling and relaxing. So I mentioned that, it's kind of a pain to work on this thing because your board's kind of buried down below the Vista, the naked Vista down there. So if you have any work to do down there, yeah, it's a little bit of a challenge. But Dax has made these spacers. Now I found in my particular case that to get my camera angle about where I wanted, the bottom that hooks into this front little stack part, I put that on top of all the boards, and that gave me, kind of pulled the camera angle down a little bit. If you want more camera angle, you lower that a bit and it'll poke the camera up higher. Of course, for inside flight, we've got a pretty wide field of view with that camera, so I didn't feel it was necessary to raise my camera angle to have any fun. Also, I think one of the other concerns that many people will have is about how exposed everything is. Now, I had a series of crashes, and I didn't have any troubles with Vistas. A number of people have commented about going naked on their Vistas, taking off the heat sinks, and not having durability issues, but I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that. So if you wanted something that would protect the Vista, you're actually going to add weight, of course, but mounting might also be an issue. It may be something simple that you just mount something over this area, maybe a little triangle or something to keep things from generally hitting the board. Again, I had a bunch of crashes. I've been flying this for a number of weeks, and I haven't had any problems. Repairs when you break these nylon screws, they just takes forever, and they don't necessarily thread through these very easy. You've got to kind of finesse them through. I always kind of felt like I was going to just break one of the screws by twisting them, and because they are this nylon material, as it gets tight as you get into the Vista, I found that I would strip out the heads. They're Phillips pan heads, and so I would find that I would strip those out, so then I'm using needle nose or some sort of plier to then grab the head and turn it as it gets down lower and lower. You do need to chop off the standoffs. I've got a frame over here where I can show you. I was experimenting with going with metal as well, although this one isn't. So you chop those off. I borked this one, that's why I kept it around, just to kind of show you. So you chop the posts off, and then you just clip them with your wire snips or something like that. Then I took my soldering iron and pushed it down through there. I made these too big, and then I was thinking, well, I'll just throw a little washer, dig it out of my bin. And then, I didn't like that because I figured, these are going to be wobbling around. I want it to be fairly snug all the way through. So I got another frame out and redid it. So that's something that when you're making these holes, poke your soldering iron through, clean up any of the melted, and then put your screw through and see how it is. Don't start big at what you think it is. Start what you think is small, and then work a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, and then work around the board. So that's something that you do have to do in order to be able to get those screws through there. I'm not 100% certain you can use metal screws because, again, these nylon ones were really tight. And maybe they're just oversized or something, or maybe it's, the mounting is something that I did, but I just found them to be very tight. Watch Dak's video on it and see what he has to say about his build experiences, because I do believe he's built more than one of these. He is actually, I've seen people posting on his Facebook account of other builds that they have, and maybe some of you have come in at lower weight than even I have, but I thought it was very interesting to be able to bring the weight down lower than the HD0, which is really surprising to me because it has a single board. But it's also got a canopy. There's some little things that I guess we could shave some weight. We could trim these off to shave some weight. These props are very light. They're like 0.35 grams. So really light props. These Aziz props are also very light. The Aziz props get all the way down on your motor belt. I know it's going to be hard to see there, but I could not get the HQ ones, and I did drill them out a little bit. HQ props, they don't drill them out. Please, HQ, start drilling out your micro props all the way through, same size. Of course, when I drill them out, I don't want to make them any bigger so that they slip on the part they do stick on. I just was trying to get them drilled out close enough to where I could get them pressed all the way down, but I could not accomplish that. But you do see, maybe you can see that, I did drill those out with a little hand drill that I have, just not big enough to get them all the way down on the shaft. I do have a capacitor on here. It's a tiny little capacitor, but I don't know that that's necessary or not. I've only built the one. I have the capacitor on here basically because it was already on this pigtail when I started on the board. This board does not come with an XT30 and this pigtail. It comes with one of those dual PH20 connectors. So maybe another reason to have a capacitor is maybe that will help save from that initial plug-in of frying anything on the board. It is only a 5 amp ESC, and I know a lot of people are kind of adverse to using the 5 amp ESC because if the props are bound up and they can't spin freely and you're armed or you're trying to fly or you come in upside down on a blanket or a tree or grass, 5 amp ESCs tend to be sensitive to that motor spike, that voltage spike that we get when our motors are stuck or props are stuck. So something else to be aware of, but I did order 2 more of those boards because I really like the fact that I can update the receiver without having to update the flight control firmware, Betaflight. So that's it. You need to head over to Dax's channel, watch his videos on the Mobigital 7, and thank you again for doing this work and bringing this to the community. I certainly appreciate it. You need to hit him up and subscribe. I'll put links to the different things that I used down in the video description. That all-in-one board down here, it's the diamond-shaped board. It's real light too. I think 3.3 grams is what it came in on my scale. Unfortunately, I didn't take a picture before I started the build. I was too excited. And it's got Express LRS built in, so that's why I ordered 2 more of those boards. And I do want to use those boards more to kind of test the reliability, because that's something else that we oftentimes think of when it comes to all-in-ones. Everyone's always looking for the most reliable all-in-one. As of this time, I think they're all kind of equal for the most part. But head over to Dax's channel. I'll have parts that I use for mine down in the video description. I'll also have a Betaflight dump down in the video description. If you want to try my tune out, so be it. But remember, you know, if things change, the tune might not work out so well for you. Thanks again, Dax. He also sent me a kit that I can use to build a second one, some prints in here. And I'll link his Thingiverse down in the video description as well, so you can find the 3D printed parts that you'll need in order to build one up. And if you have a Whoop company, if you're not a builder and you have a favorite Whoop company, maybe it's iFlight or something else, show them this video. Show them Dax's video. Show them what can be done on 2S with a naked Vista inside. I think this is something that the market, the bind and fly market, needs to bring, so that those that don't want to build can have one of their own. And maybe they'll come up with a canopy that doesn't stick way up in the air like the iFlight does. You know, I like a low profile, so I can do some slower sort of shooting gaps. You know, keep the camera down out front and make some sort of canopy that has it all mounted a little bit like the HD0 Mobila 7. So show the companies these videos as well, so that they can see what's possible, what they're missing out on. Because I think this is a lot more fun than this. Because of the weight, because of the noise. More weight is less maneuverability inside. Because inside flying is hard enough. The last thing we need is more weight dragging us around our corners. So if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching.